China is a land where history does not feel distant. It lives in the mountains, moves through the rivers, and whispers through the silence of ancient temples. This is not simply the China of crowded skylines, neon lights, and modern speed. Beyond the familiar image lies another world, older, quieter, and filled with mystery. Here, mountains rise like guardians of forgotten centuries. Mist rolls over sacred peaks, stone paths disappear into the clouds, and stories passed down for generations still seem alive in the landscape. In this journey, we are not searching for the usual postcard views. We are stepping into a deeper China, a place where myth and memory seem to exist beside reality. From mighty rivers and ancient walls to sacred mountains and painted valleys, this is a journey into the unseen China, a world shaped by time, belief, endurance, and wonder. The story of China begins with the land itself. Long before emperors, dynasties, and great cities, there were mountains, plains, forests, and rivers shaping human life across this vast territory. Geography was never just a background to Chinese civilization. It was one of its greatest architects. Natural barriers protected regions. Fertile plains supported early farming, and rivers created the conditions for settlement, trade, and cultural growth. Across these landscapes, people learned how to survive, organize, and build communities that would eventually grow into one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. China's immense scale is part of its identity. From the high plateaus in the west to the river valleys of the center and the wide plains of the north, every region helped form a different chapter of its story. To understand China, we must first understand the land that made its civilization possible. Among the great rivers of China, the Yellow River holds a special place in history. Often called the cradle of Chinese civilization, it carried rich sediment from the highlands and spread it across broad plains, creating fertile lands where some of the earliest farming communities took root. Along its banks, ancient people planted crops, built villages, and formed the foundations of organized society. Over time, these early communities developed stronger social structures, shared traditions, and the beginnings of political order. The river gave life, but it also demanded resilience. Its shifting course and powerful floods shaped not only the land, but the character of the people who depended on it. To stand beside the Yellow River is to stand near one of the birthplaces of Chinese history, where nature and human effort came together to build the earliest chapters of a civilization that would endure for thousands of years. If the Yellow River shaped the north, the Yangtze helped define life across the south and center of China. Flowing for thousands of kilometers, it became a vital source of water, transportation, trade, and agricultural growth. Along its basin, Communities expanded across fertile lowlands, and the rhythm of daily life became closely tied to the river's seasonal flow. The Yangtze region supported rice cultivation on a massive scale, helping populations grow and settlements become more stable and prosperous. Over centuries, it connected landscapes, cultures, and economies, becoming more than a river. It became an artery of civilization. The contrast between the Yellow River and the Yangtze also reveals the diversity of early China, where different environments produced different ways of living. Together, these two rivers gave China both balance and strength, shaping the conditions for one of the most remarkable cultural continuities in human history. China is not just a nation. It is a vast geographic world of contrasts. It stretches across deserts, grasslands, snow-covered mountains, humid river basins, and dense forests. It borders more countries than almost any other nation on Earth, and contains landscapes so different that each feels like its own world. In one direction, there are wind-swept plateaus and remote mountain passes. In another, there are fertile plains filled with farms, villages, and cities. This immense scale has always shaped China's identity. It created regional diversity, influenced local traditions, and gave rise to many ways of life within one civilization. Even today, traveling through China can feel like moving through multiple countries connected by a shared cultural thread. Its size is not only physical, it is historical, cultural, and emotional. To understand China fully, one must appreciate how large, complex, and layered this land truly is. Traveling through China often feels like walking through a living chronicle of history. The past is not sealed away in museums alone. It remains visible in old city walls, temple courtyards, mountain monasteries, and ancient roads that still follow the shape of the land. Every structure, every river crossing, and every worn stone step seems to carry the memory of those who came before. What makes China unique is not simply the age of its history, but the way that history still lives within the present. A modern train may pass a village whose traditions stretch back centuries. A bustling city may rise beside ruins older than many nations. This coexistence of past and present gives China a rare sense of continuity. Here, history is not only remembered, it is inhabited. It breathes through architecture, landscapes, ritual, and collective memory, reminding us that civilization is something built, preserved, and lived over time. China's civilization is often described as more than 5,000 years old, but its true strength lies not only in age. It lies in endurance. Across centuries of change, through wars, dynastic transitions, invasions, reform, and renewal, the cultural core of Chinese life remained remarkably resilient. Values, customs, beliefs, artistic traditions, and social structures evolved, yet they did not disappear. Instead, they adapted while preserving a recognizable identity. This is one of the most remarkable features of Chinese civilization: its ability to absorb change without losing itself. Language, family tradition, philosophy, and ritual all played a role in that continuity. The result is a culture that feels layered rather than broken, where the ancient and the modern often stand side by side. To explore China is to see how memory survives in everyday life, in tea, architecture, festivals, literature, and the quiet habits passed from one generation to the next. Much of Chinese civilization was shaped not only by rulers and events, but by ideas. Three great traditions, Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, deeply influenced how people understood family, society, nature, and the meaning of life. Confucian thought emphasized respect, duty, discipline, and harmony within relationships. Taoism looked to nature, balance, and the subtle wisdom of living in accordance with the universe. Buddhism brought teachings of compassion, meditation, and spiritual awakening. Over time, these traditions did not remain separate in daily life. They intertwined, influencing ethics, art, politics, architecture, and personal belief. Temples, monasteries, mountain shrines, and sacred landscapes became places where philosophy and devotion found physical expression. Even today, the presence of these traditions can still be felt in the rhythm of Chinese cultural life. Together, they helped shape the moral and spiritual heart of a civilization that has always searched for order, harmony, and meaning. The influence of Chinese philosophy is not limited to temples or texts. It lives most clearly in everyday life. For generations, values such as respect for parents, care for elders, loyalty to family, and responsibility toward the wider community have shaped how people live and relate to one another. These ideals were not simply taught as abstract lessons. They were practiced in the home, repeated in rituals, and strengthened through custom. The family became one of the core foundations of Chinese society, a place where moral values were learned and passed down. Even as China changed over time, these principles remained deeply rooted in cultural identity. In many ways, the strength of Chinese civilization has always depended on these small, human forms of continuity. The habits of respect, shared responsibility, and inherited wisdom that link one generation to the next and hold the larger social world together. Across China, certain mountains have long been seen as more than natural landmarks. They are sacred spaces, places where earth and sky seem to draw closer, and where people have gone for centuries in search of silence, reflection, and spiritual understanding. Monks, pilgrims, scholars, and travelers climbed these heights not only to reach a destination, but to transform themselves through the journey. Temples and monasteries were built high on ridges, hidden in forests, or suspended above valleys, creating places where prayer and landscape became inseparable. The higher one climbs, the quieter the world often seems. Wind replaces noise, clouds erase distance, stone paths turn inward as much as upward. In these mountain sanctuaries, China reveals a deeper side of itself, not the side of power or scale, but the side of contemplation. Here, the journey becomes spiritual, and silence becomes part of the story. When people around the world think of China's greatest man-made wonders, the Great Wall is often the first image that appears. Yet the journey to it is part of the experience. Leaving the modern rhythm of Beijing behind, the road begins to wind through quieter landscapes, past small villages, fields, and low green mountains. Slowly, the urban world disappears, and a different atmosphere begins to take hold. The air feels stiller. The horizon feels older. Then, almost suddenly, the wall appears, stretching along the ridges like a line drawn across history itself. Even before stepping onto it, the Great Wall carries an emotional weight. It is familiar from photographs, yet in person it feels entirely different. Larger, harsher, and more human. This is not just a famous monument, it is a structure born of struggle, strategy, endurance, and the immense effort of countless lives across many centuries. The first step onto the Great Wall is unforgettable. Stone stairs rise sharply into the mountain, and every curve of the wall follows the natural shape of the ridgeline. Looking along its path, it seems endless, disappearing into distance, climbing over peaks, and bending with the land in a way that feels both strategic and beautiful. The scale is difficult to understand until you stand on it yourself. The wall is wide, solid, and commanding, yet also deeply weathered by time. Every brick and watchtower suggests the passage of generations. Here, history is no longer abstract. It becomes physical. You feel it under your feet and see it in the stone. The Great Wall is often described as a symbol of China, and standing here makes that easy to understand. It is a monument not only of defense, but of ambition, resilience, and historical memory. The Great Wall inspires awe, but it also carries a darker history. It was built and rebuilt over many centuries under brutal conditions. Soldiers, laborers, and prisoners worked across steep mountain slopes. In freezing winters and scorching summers, hauling stone and earth across some of the harshest terrain imaginable. Many never returned home. Behind the grandeur of the wall lies a story of sacrifice on an immense scale. That is part of what gives the structure such emotional power. It is not only a masterpiece of engineering, it is also a reminder of how much human effort, discipline, and suffering can be contained within stone. As the wind moves along the battlements and the mountains stretch away in silence, it becomes impossible not to think about the people whose lives were spent building this line across the north. The Great Wall stands as memory as much as monument. Leaving the ancient stone of the Great Wall behind, the journey turns toward a very different landscape. Tianmen Mountain in Hunan Province feels less like a monument and more like a dream shaped by nature. Its towering cliffs, mist-filled valleys, and dramatic elevation give it an atmosphere that is both beautiful and surreal. This is a place where the natural world seems to stretch beyond ordinary scale. Forested slopes fall into deep ravines, clouds gather around rock faces, and light changes the entire mood of the mountain from one moment to the next. Tianmen is famous not only for its beauty, but for the almost mythical feeling it creates in those who visit. It feels suspended between earth and sky, between the physical and the symbolic. After the military history of the Great Wall, this mountain introduces another side of China, one defined by wonder, mystery, and cinematic natural power. The journey to Tianmen Mountain begins in the city of Zhangjiajie. where one of the most remarkable ascents in China starts from the urban center itself. Visitors board a cable car that glides out above the city and begins a long climb toward the mountain. As the cabin rises, buildings shrink below, roads become thin lines, and the view slowly transforms into a panorama of forests, cliffs, and open air. The sensation is extraordinary. It feels as though the mountain is revealing itself layer by layer. Valleys appear beneath the cabin, steep rock faces drift past at eye level, and the city disappears into distance. This ascent is not just a way to reach the summit, it is part of the mountain's drama. It creates a gradual transition from human space to natural grandeur, preparing the traveler for a landscape that seems to belong almost to another world. Even after the cable car reaches the mountain, the journey is not over. One of Tianmen's most iconic features is the dramatic staircase of 999 steps leading toward the immense natural arch known as Heaven's Gate. The staircase rises directly up the mountain, creating a path that feels ceremonial as much as physical. Each step seems to draw the traveler toward something larger than the landscape itself. At the top stands the arch, carved by nature into the rock face over time, towering above the mountain like a portal between worlds. Standing beneath it, the scale of the place becomes overwhelming. The wind echoes through the opening, clouds drift nearby, and human presence suddenly feels very small. This is one of those rare moments in travel when a place seems almost symbolic by nature itself. Tianmen does not merely impress the eye, it stirs the imagination. From the surreal heights of Tianmen, the journey moves toward one of China's most sacred spiritual landscapes, Mount Wutai in Shanxi province. Unlike a single dramatic summit, Wutai is a mountain region of multiple peaks, long revered in Chinese Buddhism as a holy place associated with wisdom and enlightenment. For centuries, monks, pilgrims, and seekers have come here not in search of spectacle alone, but for peace, devotion, and reflection. The atmosphere is entirely different from the thrill of Tianmen. Wutai feels spacious, calm, and deeply contemplative. The mountain air is cool, the horizons are broad, and the human structures here, temples, monasteries, courtyards, seem to exist in quiet harmony with the surrounding land. It is a place where belief has shaped the landscape for generations. In Mount Wutai, China reveals itself not through power or scale, but through spiritual depth and stillness. Mount Wutai is home to dozens of temples and monasteries, many with histories stretching back centuries. Some are modest and quiet, hidden among slopes and trees. Others stand more prominently, with layered roofs, painted beams, and courtyards shaped by ritual and time. What makes this place special is not only the architecture, but the atmosphere that surrounds it. Even in the warmer months, the air remains cool and refreshing, and the stillness of the mountain gives each temple a sense of timelessness. Bells echo softly. Incense smoke drifts through open spaces. Visitors move more slowly, as if responding to the rhythm of the place itself. These are not just religious buildings. They are living spaces of devotion and continuity, where generations have come to pray, learn, and meditate. In Wutai, architecture becomes part of the spiritual landscape, and silence becomes part of the experience. At Mount Wutai, travel becomes something more inward. The mountain does not overwhelm with danger or spectacle. Instead, it invites reflection. Walking along its paths, listening to the wind, or standing quietly in a temple courtyard, one begins to feel that the destination matters less than the state of mind it creates. That may be why sacred mountains hold such a lasting place in Chinese culture. They are not simply places to see, they are places to pause. In a world often defined by motion and noise, Wutai preserves another rhythm, one shaped by prayer, routine, weather, and time. Even brief moments here feel expanded by stillness. For many visitors, the memory of Mount Wutai is not tied to one dramatic sight, but to a feeling. The cool air, the quiet bells, the empty pathways, and the sense that the world has become softer and slower. That is its true power. After the calm of Mount Wutai, the journey takes a dramatic turn toward Mount Huashan in Shanxi province. One of China's 5 sacred mountains, and deeply connected with Taoist tradition, Huashan is famous for its razor-sharp ridges, near vertical cliffs, and intimidating beauty. At first glance, the mountain seems almost unreal, as if giant blades of stone had been thrust up from the earth. Unlike the open spiritual calm of Wutai, Huashan confronts the traveler with exposure, height, and raw geology. Yet this, too, is a sacred place, one where temples and shrines have long existed alongside danger and steep ascent. Huashan represents another face of Chinese spirituality. Not only serenity, but courage, endurance, and the challenge of reaching what lies above. Here, the mountain path is not gentle. It demands attention, balance, and nerve, turning every step into a physical experience of awe. The climb up Mount Huashan often begins in quiet forested sections, where stone paths rise gradually through ancient pines and rugged slopes. But this calm beginning does not last long. As the ascent continues, the mountain becomes steeper, the pathways narrower, and the cliffs more exposed. Stone steps seem carved directly into the rock, often rising sharply upward in ways that test both body and concentration. In some places, iron chains have been fixed into the mountainside to help climbers keep their balance. The higher you go, the more the mountain reveals its character. Huashan is not simply scenic, it is demanding. Every turn brings another sheer drop, another staircase, another ledge cut into stone. Yet that challenge is part of its fascination. The climb transforms the mountain from something observed at a distance into something felt directly, through effort, tension, and determination. At Huashan's most dramatic sections, the path narrows to the point where every step demands full attention. Below lies a deep chasm. Beside you, a near vertical wall of stone. Above, the route continues as if suspended in air. The mountain wind becomes stronger, and the feeling of height sharpens every movement. It is easy to understand why this is considered one of the most thrilling mountain routes in the world. And yet, the fear that Huashan creates is inseparable from its beauty. The exposure, the emptiness, and the vast view combine to produce a kind of wonder that calmer landscapes cannot offer. In these moments, the mountain forces a deeper awareness of space, gravity, and vulnerability. Fear and awe exist together here. Huashan is not only a place to admire, it is a place that demands respect, reminding every traveler how small the human body truly is against stone and sky. After the cliffs and intensity of Huashan, the journey opens into a scene of remarkable calm. Erhai Lake, near Dali in Yunnan province, offers a completely different image of China. Here, the land feels gentler. The lake stretches across the valley like a ribbon of turquoise, reflecting the changing sky and framed by the Kangshan Mountains beyond. The mood is quiet, open, and graceful. Where the north often feels rugged and historic, Erhai feels fluid, lived in, and serene. The water softens the landscape and slows the imagination. Standing by the shore, it is not drama that captures the mind, but stillness. This is the kind of place where movement becomes unhurried and observation becomes enough. Erhai reminds us that the beauty of China is not only found in extremes. Sometimes it appears in balance, in open water, distant mountains, and the peaceful meeting of nature and daily life. Erhai Lake is more than a scenic place. It is also a cultural homeland, especially for the Bai people who have lived around its shores for generations. Their villages, traditions, and architecture form an essential part of the landscape. White-walled houses with gray tiled roofs stand near the water, often decorated with colorful murals that reflect local identity and artistry. Life here remains closely connected to the lake through farming, trade, gathering, and daily routine. This relationship between people and place gives Erhai a special character. It is not a landscape separated from human life, but one shaped by it over time. The presence of the Bai community adds warmth and continuity to the lake's natural beauty. In these villages, culture is not displayed as something distant or preserved behind glass. It remains visible in homes, streets, customs, and the quiet rhythms of everyday life along the water. What makes Erhai memorable is not only the view, but the pace. The roads around the lake encourage slow travel. Cyclists move between villages. Tea is shared in open-air spaces, and the changing light over the water becomes part of the day's experience. In the morning, the lake may appear soft and silver. By afternoon, it glows with deeper blue and green tones. At sunset, the water reflects gold and orange, and everything seems to quiet even further. Despite growing tourism, Erhai has preserved much of its charm because its beauty depends on atmosphere rather than spectacle. The surrounding villages, the open fields, the lakeside roads, and the distant mountains all contribute to a feeling of calm continuity. This is a place where one does not need to rush from viewpoint to viewpoint. Simply being present beside the lake is enough to understand why it leaves such a lasting impression. From the calm waters of Erhai, the journey rises again into one of China's most extraordinary mountain landscapes, Fanjing Mountain in Guizhou Province. Often wrapped in mist and clouds, it appears from a distance like an island floating above the earth. Its atmosphere is both natural and spiritual, shaped by ancient forests, steep stone pathways, and the feeling of isolation created by elevation. Fanjing is part of a protected nature reserve and preserves a rare ecosystem filled with old-growth vegetation and wildlife. Yet beyond its ecological importance, the mountain also carries a strong sense of mystery. The clouds often conceal as much as they reveal, making every glimpse feel temporary and dreamlike. In many ways, Fanjing Mountain represents one of the most magical sides of China, where geography, spirituality, and weather combine to create a landscape that feels almost detached from ordinary time and space. One of the most iconic sights on Fanjing Mountain is the Great Rock Formation near its summit, where the stone rises sharply upward and splits into two distinct peaks. At the top of each stands a small temple, connected by a narrow bridge and surrounded by open sky. It is one of the most extraordinary combinations of architecture and nature in China. Reaching this point requires effort. Thousands of stone steps lead visitors upward through changing weather and shifting cloud cover. As the ascent continues, the world below disappears into mist, and the summit begins to feel suspended above the earth. When the clouds drift beneath the temples, the entire scene seems almost unreal. It is easy to understand why Fanjing Mountain has such a strong spiritual reputation. Few places create this sense of elevation, isolation, and wonder so completely. Here, the mountain becomes vision as much as destination. While Fanjing Mountain feels mystical and vertical, Mount Sigunyang in Sichuan opens into a world of snow peaks, alpine valleys, and vast open space. Its name means Four Sisters, inspired by the four great mountains that dominate the landscape. Local legend imagines them as four beautiful sisters standing side by side, with the highest peak rising like the eldest among them. The journey into this region reveals yet another face of China, one defined by elevation, wilderness, and extraordinary natural purity. Forests, meadows, and rocky slopes stretch outward beneath the white summits, creating a landscape that feels both powerful and peaceful. Compared with more crowded destinations, Siguniang retains an impressive sense of freshness and scale. It is a place where distance matters, where the horizon feels wider, and where the mountains are not only seen but felt through silence, cold air, and the immense openness of the land. One of the most unforgettable moments in Mount Siguniang comes at sunrise. Before the day fully begins, the mountains hold a cold, blue stillness. Then slowly, the first light reaches the snow-covered summits. White peaks begin to glow with soft gold, pink, and orange tones, and the entire landscape seems to awaken without losing its silence. These are the moments when words feel unnecessary. The scale of the mountains, the purity of the air, and the changing color of the light speak more clearly than explanation ever could. In the valleys below, grasses, streams, and forest edges remain still, while high above, the peaks gather the morning. This contrast between stillness and brightness gives Siguniang a rare emotional power. It is not simply beautiful, it feels cleansing, almost meditative. Here, the grandeur of nature does not overwhelm. It invites quiet attention and a sense of deep appreciation. At the end of this journey comes one of the most visually extraordinary landscapes in all of China, Zhangye Dangxia in Gansu province. Here, the mountains appear painted in layers of red, gold, orange, and brown. Their colors formed over millions of years through mineral deposits, tectonic movement, wind, and rain. As sunlight moves across the ridges, the entire landscape changes, revealing new patterns and tones at every angle. It feels like the earth itself has become a work of art. And perhaps that is the perfect place to end this journey. Because China is not one image, one story, or one landscape. It is a vast world of memory, belief, endurance, beauty, and scale. From ancient rivers and sacred peaks to temples, walls, lakes, and colored mountains, every place reveals another dimension of its identity. This is the unseen China, older than expectation, deeper than appearance, and impossible to forget.